Well, as I said in my opening tonight, domestic violence is a national shame. It's killing one woman a week on average in Australia, and 1 in 3 women in Australia will experience some sort of violence from the age of 15. So what can we do as a community, as governments, as family members, as individuals in response to this problem? Well, tonight I've asked 2 women who work at different ends of the spectrum to join us for a conversation on what works, what doesn't, and what we need to do to address and lessen this terrible stain and this real threat to women's lives. Dr. Dina McMillian is a psychologist and author of the book But He Says He Loves Me, How to Avoid Being Trapped in a Manipulative Relationship. Her work focuses on prevention and is currently being used by Frankston Council in Melbourne. Moo Blouch is the CEO of Domestic Violence New South Wales, the peak body for a diverse range of organisations, and its mission is to eliminate domestic and family violence through leadership in policy, advocacy, partnerships and the promotion of best practice. Moo, let me start with you, joining us, as I should say, from our Sydney studio. This issue's never had more media attention, thanks to people like Rosie Batty. But we see funding being cut from essential services, services like shelters and legal aid. How frustrating for services is that, and why do you think we're seeing such contradictory impulses? That is, for governments to talk a great deal whilst they're cutting funding.
I think, well, what we hope in the sector is that this will result in actually some increases in funding, not just for those frontline services, but really across a broad range of different services that women and children need when they're escaping domestic and family violence. Part of that is the refuge support system, but we also need really well-funded specialist court support services. We need housing. We need a range of different responses so that women and children can get the sorts of things that they need and start to build their lives more safely. And I think you're right. I think we're in a unique situation right now. We've got unprecedented public awareness and media attention on this issue, and what we really need to see is the funding to back it.
So on the ground, and particularly in those response services, where are you most acutely seeing the funding gaps? Or if I could put it in another way, if you could get in and wave a wand and fix 3 things tomorrow, what might they be?
3 things. Look, I think the frontline refuge system, certainly in New South Wales and in other parts of the country, is at capacity most of the time. We've seen an incredible increase, I think, alongside the increase in awareness in terms of the pressure on the system itself. And that's good. It's good news because it means that women and children are seeking support, that they're going to police, that police are able to help. I think we also need an investment in the specialist court support system. As I said, that's another really key way in which we're able to support women to rebuild their lives following domestic violence. And particularly in New South Wales, we have such an issue around affordable housing. So for those women and children to begin to rebuild their lives in the longer term, we need safe, affordable places for them to go and live beyond that immediate crisis.
I want to come back and talk to you in a moment about the housing situation, particularly here in New South Wales, but I want to go now to Dr. Dina McMillian. Dina, response and acute services are essential, but Frankston Council in Melbourne, which by the way has the highest rates of domestic violence of any Melbourne LGA, has decided that it also needs to focus on prevention, specifically helping women avoid entering into abusive relationships to begin with. What are some of the key steps we can take in order to teach women or help women avoid become trapped in a manipulative relationship?
Well, one of the things I'm really proud of, Kristina, and thank you for having me here, one of the things I'm really proud of is the information that I provide is really easy to transmit. What women need is specific information on the early indicators of abuse so they can spot it before they get emotionally, sexually, financially, or practically attached to an abuser. And it's really easy to do. That's what's so galling about all of this, is that prevention is really possible, and my program will show you exactly how to do it.
Well, so when we talk about your program, and we often hear about prevention programs such as White Ribbon, and that's an important part of prevention. But what should we be saying, for example, to teenage girls, to young women who perhaps are starting their lives their social lives, they're entering into relationships with men either for the first time or at an early age?
Well, I think we need to communicate to them that they are at risk and that they should not just get to know a guy on default. They need to pay attention. But it's not that scary if they walk in armed with information, if they have knowledge that can help them see very early if someone is potentially an abuser. And that's why I think it's really key to roll out programs like my program, which is called Unmasking the Abuser, so that women of all ages can spot this early and keep themselves safe.
And indeed, some of those, you've talked about some of those early markers for men who are abusers, and that many men who are abusive actually exhibit some of the very same traits.
Yes.
And you found that women have said to you, for example, why didn't anyone tell me this before?
Yes, in fact, some of the women who've come to my training or to my seminars to the public have actually been very angry, and not with me. When they find out my book and programs have been out since 2007 and they're just finding out about it, I've had a variety of them come to me and say, if I had known this, I wouldn't have gotten involved with my last boyfriend, partner, or husband. Why aren't we telling everyone this?
Well, I want to go back now and talk to Moo for a moment on the issue of housing and stability for women who are leaving relationships, and I want to talk specifically to the New South Wales circumstance. And in doing so, acknowledge that New South Wales Police have actually used some of Dina's work for women who are recovering and leaving a violent relationship. But in New South Wales, Moo, I want to ask you, we've had a program called Staying Home, Leaving Violence, which was focused on keeping women in their home, safe and within their own networks of support. That seemed rather innovative, but over for the past few years, what have we learned from that approach? Has it worked, and are there things that we could do to improve that type of approach?
Look, I think Staying Home, Leaving Violence is a beautiful model because it fits very nicely with the principles of the National Plan to Reduce Violence Against Women and Their Children, and the section in there where we talk about holding perpetrators of violence to account. The idea of the Staying Home, Leaving Violence model is that women are supported to stay in their own home rather than having to be the one that leaves. And whilst this doesn't work for all women and all families, for a number of women that have been able to access the Staying Home, Leaving Violence system, they've reported very positive outcomes. I think this program has been used in different permutations in other states and territories in Australia, and it gets really good results.
Now, I'm mindful of time, and unfortunately I wish I could spend a longer amount of time talking about the way we approach this issue, but from each of you in the time we have left, can I ask one message to our state premiers and the Prime Minister on what they need to do to help keep women safe in their homes? We'll start with you, Dina.
I would say prevention is possible, and it is much cheaper to fund prevention than to try to fund response and reaction, and that it's time now.
And you, Moo Balch?
Look, I think we've seen a lot of noise about domestic violence in the last 12 to 18 months. If premiers and our Prime Minister and our community leaders are really serious about tackling domestic violence, you need to put some serious money into the service system, those support systems that are working with women and children right now. And if you did that, we could shift this within a generation.
I want to thank you both for the work that you do, and I want to thank you for sharing your insights tonight on Monday Politics.